And people are populating. Hello. Happy Thursday, everybody. Happy summertime. Don't we wish we were in Vegas, out by the pool, toasting each other? But here we are. So yeah, here we are. Thank you all for taking time today to join, which is good, what is going to be a really fun conversation. I'm Patty Phillips, CEO of Women Leaders in College Sports. I am honored to be moderating this panel of epic rock stars, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Couple things before we get started. We are recording this. It will go out to the NAD group shortly after the call. Go ahead and put your questions in the chat feature, and I will be trying to monitor that throughout the conversation. And then we'll save some time at the end to make sure we can get to more questions. And Jason has encouraged everyone to use your speaker view, although none of the four panelists really want our faces to be huge on your screen, but that's an option if you would like to go that route. So I'll go ahead and welcome our all-star panel. We have Sarah Baumgardner from Rutgers. She's the Deputy Director of Athletics. Sarah, say hi so we can all see you.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you guys are all with us.
And we'll come back for the full intros of career. We have Shannon Kelly, who's the Associate Athletics Director for Advancement at the University of Washington, UW, the Dogs.
Hi, guys.
Welcome. And then we have Marcy Lanou from Senior Associate Athletics Director, Chief Development Officer, and SWA at the University of San Diego. Marcy, I mean, I've known you for a million years. Please tell me I said your last name correctly.
Oh, of course you did. You wouldn't get that wrong, but
Oh.
happy to be here this morning, and you officially mastered the longest title in college athletics.
Yeah, I rolled right through that, didn't I? So, and that's great, because Marcy, we're going to come back to that about you adding the SWA title, which is fantastic. And so this conversation is really about women in development advancing. So not only advancing up into the senior roles in development, but also adding different kind of titles and job responsibilities to portfolios. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about development right now during COVID. We're going to talk about being women, females in a very male-dominated industry. So we got a lot of fun stuff to get to. First, let's hear from these three about how they actually got into the roles they were in. From Women Leaders in College Sports particularly, we hear a lot of women that want to get into development and they don't know how to get started. So we want to know how you all got started in development and how you landed where you are. And Shannon, we're going to start with you on this one.
Great. So yeah, my story is pretty interesting in that I arrived back from Europe after playing overseas for a couple of years, and knew I wanted to get in athletics, and also knew that I didn't want to get into coaching, that I was hoping to kind of look more at the administrative side of things, which I think I struggled with that for quite a while, because coaching was also a passion of mine, and I knew, but I knew I wanted to be in the athletic space, and I knew I wanted to be in the college space. So arriving back from Europe, I applied to grad school, and they indicated to me that I needed to get an internship. I went to Seattle Pacific University because the UW didn't have the graduate program that they have now. So I called my former coach and I said, I need an internship. And by the way, what do you think I would be good at in athletics? You know, and really kind of leaned on her for a little bit of guidance. And she said, you know what? They just hired this really fun gal over in the Tyee Club, which is our fundraising arm. And let me make some calls. And maybe a week later, I was able to get an internship, a grad assistantship, and I showed up on my first day of work, and there was Jen Cohen as JC. I had no idea what fundraising meant. As a student athlete, I had no idea the work that went behind the scenes to enhance my student athlete experience, but it was really that connection. She was brand new in her role as an annual gift officer, doing seat-related giving for men's and women's basketball, and it was just so much fun. And it was kind of one of those moments where I knew however I was going to navigate, I wanted to be on the external side of things. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of just a love at first sight in terms of the work. My path took a little bit of a different turn. I actually spent about 7 years on upper campus, which was actually extremely helpful in terms of fine-tuning my skills. But I've come back here now for 11 years. But so much of that was that initial moment as a grad student, and kind of that aha moment, and basically having a terrific mentor right out of the gates.
Yeah. Shannon, so you've been at UW in fundraising or advancement your entire career?
I've played multiple roles here during the 2008 with a lot of the layoffs and stuff. I took game day ops and marketing over, but I've been in advancement. So yeah, this has been my one stop.
Okay, awesome. And already a couple great lessons there. For men and women on the call, when you have young people wanting to get into the industry, encouraging them to think about this route. A lot of times student athletes only think about student athlete development because that's the only person that they interacted with mostly as student athletes. So we got to give JC a shout out. Hopefully if she jumps on the call, she's been a lead panelist for this discussion in the past as well. So how about Marcy?
Awesome. Happy to go. So I really started off in college athletics as a soccer student athlete at Louisiana Lafayette, and then ended up transferring to South Florida. And then during my time at South Florida, I ended up not participating in soccer anymore, but I felt super passionate about college athletics, and I really missed the interaction. So I just went for it. I literally cold called the athletics department office and just said, hey, I'm willing to answer phones. I'm really willing to file paperwork, whatever you need me to do. I'd love to get my foot in the door professionally. And so that's what I did. The SWA, who actually I think is on the call today, Barbara Sparks McGlinchey, at the time at South Florida, took a chance on me. And while I was, just an undergrad, they really, her and several other administrators just, allowed me to really touch so many different things in the athletic department. And I think naturally my skill set probably shined through to a lot of them. And they recognized that I'm probably a people person because I was probably buzzing around and being social and wanted to talk to other staff and coaches. And so I just, I think in general, I heard a lot of feedback. Hey, you'd be great in development, and again, like Shannon, I didn't know what that was necessarily at the time. So it was putting my educational hat on and looking across the hallway to my peers in development to learn a little bit more about what they were doing. So upon graduation, I had the opportunity to be hired full-time to work as our executive assistant for our AD. And, it's so funny. And I think young professionals battle with this, whether it's taking an internship after college or a professional opportunity. And for me, I think the executive assistant title at the time, I was like, well, I don't want to be the secretary. I don't want to be the female secretary for the AD. But I'm so thankful I got past that because I was able to see everything that actually comes through an athletic department. I was able to be exposed to game contracts, to, dealing with high level donors at the time with our AD. And it really just sparked my interest even more so of pursuing my goals of becoming an AD. So that was critical. Did that for a year and then ended up getting an awesome opportunity at Miami. University of Miami, being, a Florida native, that was just an exciting time for me. Went there in a role where I served in the ticket office, actually, and then got promoted a year later, running our events for our athletic development office. So while I wasn't necessarily a major gift fundraiser or development officer at the time, it got my foot in the door and I was able to feel comfortable, confident in those settings. Which was, again, very instrumental to me. And then went back to South Florida the second time as finally more of this hybrid between a development officer and I was also in ticket sales. So it was really interesting to have that experience and loved every moment of it. And then from there, went to Southern Miss, Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And that you know, that role was really probably my first more senior level role, I would say, in development, and just really enjoyed my time there. And then, you know, took the opportunity 3 years ago to come to the University of San Diego. And actually, when I first got here, I was overseeing our external affairs. So really was more on the marketing, communications, sponsorship side of things. And somebody else was hired in the development role. However, I still had a portfolio. With his departure, gosh, I think it was November, I pivoted and I'm finally back in what I love to do is strictly, you know, really fundraising and garnering the resources. So that's my story.
So first of all, Barbara, if she's on the call, needs a huge shout out because we love that Barbara kind of mentored you along, gave you a shot here. But Marcy, a huge part of your story, how many of those stops, the last two, your boss took you with him, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
was that, he took you with him to Ole Miss or Mississippi State and then back, right?
Yeah, so I'd be failing him if I didn't give him a shout out for sure, because I met Bill McGillis, our AD at South Florida. He took me to Southern Miss and then took me here to USD. So he has been, you know, you talk about a male who promotes women and takes women under their wing. He is absolutely that person. And I couldn't be more forever grateful for him.
Yeah. Well, but the other great lesson that we've had you speak on this before too, you can't say it, but I can. I mean, when people take you with them, that says something about you. And we all need to strive to be that type of teammate and employee that when our boss gets another job, they will take us with them. And then it allows you to try different things. In fact, before we go to Sarah, Marcy, we do have a question in the chat, like how were you able, talk about your pivot from ticketing development and events, you know, and which was very different, right? So talk about how you're able to shift from the ticketing to development.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of similarities, I'd say. It comes down to customer service, right? I mean, from a ticket standpoint, you're on the front lines, you're fulfilling orders, you're fulfilling questions. You're really the front line in a lot of ways to the athletic department, to the fan base. So really making that pivot to development is quite easy, I would say. You know, ticketing can certainly be more transactional, where fundraising really is more so about the deeper relationship, the responsibility we have to inspire donors to consider making a bigger impact than purchasing tickets. So, you know, it's certainly a journey, but I would say it's something totally doable, and in a lot of ways they're very similar. And you know, I'd encourage anyone, if you have an opportunity, perhaps maybe not in development right away, but you do in ticketing, go for the ticketing. And I don't believe that you would be, you know, stuck there in that role. I think those could be interchangeable in so many ways.
Okay, those are great tips. The other thing
Real quick, I just want to add to Marcy, because for Rutgers, I don't know how many of our staff are on here. I see Andrew, but you know, we've hired, at least when I was first here, we hired, I think two women from the ticket sales team who came and worked over into development. So one became an annual gift officer, one was in charge of special events. We actually hired a third guy who's now from ticketing. So I think ticketing is like, it translates easily. So we can speak from experience at Rutgers. We have done the same thing.
That's awesome. The other thing that Marcy said that I think is worth noting is, you know, taking that kind of, I don't know if it was your first entry level job, but just kind of around the athletic director. First of all, those are such important jobs because you see the scope of the athletic department. I would think it'd be super important in development as well, when you're really trying to understand better the entire story, you know, so that you can sell that. So that's another great tip for the young folks on the call, to be willing just to take the jobs as long as you are, you know, in those kind of executive circles around the athletic director, to really hear the language of leadership and really understand more the entire vision of the department. Okay, Sarah B., you weren't always at Rutgers. You used to be right down the road.
I know, I-70.
Yeah, right down I-70. I used to see Sarah B. at the Big 12 women's tournaments when she was at Missouri, when they used to be in the Big 12. That's how long ago it was. Those were the good old days.
Well, thank you. And it's so good to see everybody. It's kind of cool. I just zoomed to the left and I get to see so many faces and familiar friends, both amazing women and amazing men who are our champions. So it's so good to see so many of you. I appreciate you guys being here. And my journey, it's very similar as kind of what Shannon and Marcy shared. I was a student athlete at Illinois. I played softball. I had a tremendous experience as a student athlete playing a sport like softball, and I fell in love with that experience. And similar to probably the way Shannon and Marcy were, my resume was very white. And so I needed to add some experience. So I interned in development my junior and senior years. My coach kind of pushed me and said, you gotta do something within our athletic department. I had a chance to intern in development, and I got a glimpse behind the curtain of what it means to get a scholarship, what it means to have a Nike uniform, what it means to be able to travel the country and play softball at tournaments, which I didn't know, right? You don't know that people do that, and they give their money to support what we're doing. So I knew probably then that I had sparked my interest. I then stayed on and got my graduate degree at Illinois, working full time in the athletic development office. So I spent 2 years doing that. I was very humbled early on. My boss there made me take his trash out every single day and told me why he was doing that is that you're never bigger than the job or the title. And it's funny, I remember that because I remember always every day at 5 o'clock, he'd leave his office open for me to go take the trash out. But it's a lesson I never forgot because the role and what we're serving is always the most important, not who we are as individuals. So from taking his trash out to answering phones, to cold calls, to doing the grunt work, to also making asks as a graduate assistant. I had to make an ask for a $5,000 gift. I had a great experience, and I could have left my graduate with my master's and gone into corporate America, which I thought about. But I knew for me, my passion was sport. I've been in my whole life, and my passion was relationships. And for me, the ultimate marriage of those two was fundraising. So especially if you're competitive and you want to see a scoreboard change, fundraising for me was to be able to affect the bottom line. So I fell in love with it and took a chance and interviewed for a job at Missouri when I was 23. And Mike Alden was the athletic director at the time and gave me a chance of a lifetime. I really had some experience, but not a lot, in being a fundraising officer. And so I spent my first couple years at Mizzou. I had a territory in Northwest Missouri, and I had a car, and I had a list of donors I went to go see and visit, and started building relationships. And I think one of the questions, Patty, you had asked, and that you'll probably ask others, is just why you love this and how you knew. And for me, it's all about relationships and connection and building deep, authentic, real relationships, and having this just this insane, insatiable curiosity of people's journeys, of their stories, of their connections to Mizzou. And again, every year I was in the job, I continued just to enjoy it and fall in love with it more and more. I got a chance to move into leadership at Mizzou, and then I found my second love of being in athletics was not only fundraising, but leading. I was the captain of my team in Illinois, and it was probably more just by my role than it was about understanding I'm a leader and I get people to do what I'd like them to do. So I moved into leadership at Mizzou and got to oversee the development office. We moved into the SEC, which was just an incredible opportunity to lead others. But I found myself falling in love with both fundraising and the idea of being able to have the same genuine connections with people I get to work with every day, inspire them, get out of their way to be excellent at what they do. And so then I got the chance to, as I finished up my 8 years at Mizzou, Julie Herman was the athletic director at Rutgers and gave me a chance to do both the things I loved, said, come lead a fundraising shop at Rutgers and take us into the Big Ten and build a fundraising platform that's at the Big Ten level. And also be a leader, right? So lead a staff that, at the time was 9 or 10 people and I got to oversee both basketballs, but I came in as the chief fundraising officer for athletics, and I'm now the deputy athletic director. I've been in this role for about 4 years. When Julie left, a new AD came on board, and we spent the first 6 months fundraising together. We hit the road hard, and I will tell you this, that when times get hard and when change happens and adversity hits, the best thing you can do is go back to what you're really good at and don't worry about the rest, right? It'll take care of itself. And so for me, I put my head down. I got to work on fundraising, which I loved. And we raised about $30 million in his first 6 months, which gave him a bit of insight into my abilities, not as a fundraiser, but also as a person in the department that he could trust. And so he appointed me deputy AD that June of, I think, 2016. And I've been in the role ever since. And so I oversee a lot of things. My scope is wide and far reaching, but I still get to do the one thing I love, which is people being insatiably curious and loving it and helping others do what they do and do it hopefully really well.
So before we dive into some other questions, Sarah B., here's the deal. How do you do all that? Okay. Relationships is a full-time job. So what's the reality? Because it's interesting. And, and I know Marcy, you've added some stuff and Shannon as well. what's the reality of how you balance sports oversight, overseeing departments? I mean, you're a deputy. So how is that working?
So the number one thing I can say, and it's a skill set I've had to work really hard at, is to be fully present in the moment. And it sounds cliche. It sounds like, duh, that's what you should be doing. But there's the greatest gift we can give others is to give them our full presence, to give them every single ounce of us, whether it's for 1 minute, for 1 hour, for a whole day, is to be fully theirs in that moment. And for me, when I have my one-on-ones with my staff, when I have calls with donors, I have somehow found a way to give them all I've got in that moment, whether it's a minute, and realizing that for that minute, it's okay. That may be all I have to give them, but I'm going to give them the best I got. So for me, it's just being really, really intentional about being present.
Okay. Anything to add, Shannon or Marcy, to that question about these are, being an external, in development, that in itself is broad. And when you add other things to that, any other tips for how to balance those things?
I would just say too, is when the opportunity is just surround yourself with talent, right? You only have so much time in the day. You only have so much time in your own energy. So hire really good people around you and let them go for it. Empower them, empower each other, empower your team. I think that's the best advice I would say is you are as good as the people you surround yourself with.
Excellent.
The only thing I'll add, both are awesome comments too, and just embracing the fluidity, I mean, I think when you do have so many different responsibilities, your day, one moment, what Sarah's alluding to, one moment you're in a meeting regarding COVID, the next hour you're having to plan for the 21, fiscal year and looking at budgets. And then the next hour you're having a conversation with a donor, and just, embracing the moments and being flexible with your time.
And Patty, I'll just add one more thing, something more practical and maybe tactical. Is like I still use a pad of paper and pen. Like I don't do the iPad thing with tasks and all that stuff. I literally write things down, and I also have a Sharpie. And when things get done, I literally Sharpie them off my list. And there's like this greatest feeling of when things come off my list. So I still write a list, so I know the range of things I'm working on that day or that week. And I think it's also a really good lesson to work on the cell phone thing. In our meetings, we try and move our cell phones to the middle of the room, which has been an effort, right? Because it's so easy to look at your phone or look at it, and I struggle with it still, but it's also when I say be present, like you have to remove distractions intentionally. So for all of those who still struggle with that, it's good to just put your phone, turn it over, put it away, put it in your pocket, put it in a bag, because it's probably the number one thing that makes us not be present.
For sure. We say eyes up, phones down, turn them over, eyes up. And you're right. It's and there's a lot of research around writing things, Sarah. So I like that. But you're talking about surrounding yourself with good people. So let's talk about hiring and the reality of this. We do this panel because there's not enough women in development and external. And so what is the deal? And you all kind of have outgoing personality. So is that, do you have to have that to be an external? Why aren't women just kind of opting into this? Do we have the numbers at the rising star levels and they just haven't been up there? So let's just have this conversation about women in development. How do we get more? What do women need to do? Shannon? Marcy? Okay, Marcy.
Yeah, we definitely need more. I've gone through, I think 2 or 3 searches on our fundraising staff here in the last year to 2 years. And, a lot of the hiring process is a balance of who's actually applying and then us recruiting and looking through who are the rising stars. And for me, that's having conversations with other colleagues across the country. Hey, who have you identified? And it's a challenge to find females in this profession, and then certainly other minorities too as well. And so I think it's on us to when a young person reaches out and wants an hour of my time to ask questions and what it is about fundraising that they find interesting or I take advantage of that, because not only giving back to our industry, but especially if it's a female, trying to empower her to take this path. We need more women in this role. And Patty, I don't know if you remember this. I think it was maybe 2 years ago, I presented at a Institute for Administrative Advancement course in Denver. And I did research, and it's probably skewed now, but I had looked to see how many females out of all Division I schools had oversaw currently at that time some sort of revenue generating unit, whether it was sponsorships, fundraising, ticket sales, marketing. And there was only 32, and that was 2 years ago out of, what is it, 340 or something like that, Division I institutions. And that is just really disappointing in a lot of ways. And I don't want to sound negative. I just think there's so much opportunity as well. But I think of that number, and it's like, how do we move that needle? Like, you know, Women Leaders talks about all the time, is moving the needle. So.
Yep. Okay, so we got to figure out the answer to that. What's the answer, Shannon? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is if you look across academia, at least I can speak for here, it's got a very high level of female engagement. So you do have to kind of wonder, like, what is it about the athletic environment that we're not seeing the growth and the influx of women in the advancement space in the athletic environment that we're seeing across academia, right? Because women, I believe with my heart, are innately really built for fundraising, just by some of the innate qualities we have, the ability to listen, the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to navigate complex situations, right? Connection and that sort of thing. So I think we just need to take a much closer look at what is it about the environment that we're seeing a lot of the inability for women to grow here. Ironically, we have quite a few women on our team here, but I realize that that's a little bit of an anomaly. The other thing that we really talk about a lot here at our staff is to make sure that anyone who requests a job shadowing opportunity or a phone call or a informational interview, the more that we continue to try to identify talent, try to identify people that come into our space, come visit, that sort of thing, and start to make a list of people who they may not have years of experience, but they may have some of those relationship building skills, some of those intangible things that we're looking for our culture here. And let's keep in touch with them, and let's make sure that we're tracking people. So I think you have to be super, super intentional. And
Shannon, you mentioned something that came up in the chat too, that it seems like on the development side of higher ed, there's lots of women, and yet they aren't in athletics.
Absolutely.
So let's get to that. Sarah, what are your thoughts there?
I have three things. First of all, I see a lot of men on this call, which I said I love at the beginning, but you are our champions, right? Like if I don't have Mike Alden at Mizzou telling me to go to convention, telling me to engage a network, and also bringing me along as one of his, you know, as much as an employee, as a peer. So male champions are critical. But then you have males who are reaching out and saying, I want a woman. Can I find me a woman to hire, right? So I think my first thing is that we got to have more male champions. Second is, you know, I wonder if women, which I know we can't ask questions back to the group here, but I wonder if there's a fear on both sides. Like, right, if I haven't been in fundraising, how do I take that leap? Am I willing to go for the job? Because I haven't had that many stories, and Patty P, maybe you have, about a woman who goes for the job and doesn't get it. I feel like today, if you got to take the risk to go for the job that you may not think you're ready for. But I think right now you would win that day, because people want women to either lead their shops, lead their major gift efforts. You know, at Rutgers, we've got our leader of fundraising is Carly. You got me as deputy, you've got Carly as the head of fundraising, a female Maggie Long as the head of major gifts, and Liz McAuliffe is a female who is leading up our major gifts officer. And that wasn't as intentional as maybe it sounds like it would have been. So I think we have to have women willing to take the risk, and we as employers have to take the risk on somebody who may not have the experience on paper that a man does, but that we got to be able to do that. And then my final thing, Patty, which I want to say before you move on, is just that for those who don't know NAD, we have a diversity initiative program that we probably give about 30 to 40 stipends or aid every year to attend convention. We've done it for 11 years, and it's for women of color, men of color, and we've probably done over 300 recipients in the past 11 years have been able to attend convention and kind of be paired up with our leadership of NAD to learn the business and hopefully bring more people into the pipeline.
I love it. So we're going to talk all about that. So yeah, it's great that we have so many guys on the call, because they're probably on to hear how they can hire women and how can they can be better role models in this. And many of them are, which is great. I'm looking, I think we have 169 people on the call. So I don't know how many guys are on there, but we have a lot of women on this call. I'm assuming the women on this call want to advance in development. So we want specific strategies. One of the questions is, not only in development, but so you're taking a leap. All of you took leaps. And Sarah, you're right. Women, you don't need to check every box, go for it. It's a confidence thing. I just heard a great podcast about, we don't show up with confidence. Confidence comes after you go do it. It's like a risk. You go do it and then you get confident. All of you took risks and you became a manager, you became a deputy, you took on different roles before maybe you were fully confident. Give us tips for all the women on the call. How do you power through that? Why did you all think you could do it before you had done it? I think that's the thing. And you said it, Sarah. You don't do the job until you do it. And yet women think they can't do it for whatever reason. I do think you're right. Guys are wanting to hire women. They're reaching out to us as well. And we need more women raising their hands saying, I want to go for that. What can you tell the women on the call that will encourage them to raise their hand and really stretch?
Marcy, you got this one?
Yeah, I know it got my brain working here on overload, but I would say, I think the confidence piece is so critical. And I've said this so many times, and I actually, as I've said this next phrase, some people have given me pushback, like, I don't like that, or I don't believe in it. But, faking it till you make it matters in my opinion. And it's part of the confidence piece, and, I think the more leaps of faith you take, the more confidence you of course have. And okay, that last role, I had to learn through that. No one even really taught me. I had to navigate scenarios by myself. I had to lean on peers. I had to lean on coaches. I had to lean across campus. And I think having the comfort in, hey, you don't have to know all the answers. There's people, there's resources, and anytime you ask for help, I mean, when's the last time someone denied you help? I think most of us have always received help and assistance. So I think, but it comes down to the person that you have to, again, have no fear in reaching out to those, and jumping for it. Hey, if you have lofty goals and dreams, you can do it. We're all navigating, and we're all getting the opportunity to kick glass, and so that's my, I guess, advice for that very difficult question.
Well, we're going to actually go at the question from a different angle here, because I'm getting tons of comments in the chat, and I'm so glad there's so many men on this call. So thank you for being here. Everybody grab your water and coffee, because we are going for it right now. We are going to get real. So it seems like the issue is the culture, the male-dominated culture in athletics, particularly in fundraising. There's borderline harassment. So guys, these are all private chats that are flooding in. I don't think, obviously, the guys on the call probably are not contributing to that, but that's out there. So this is why women are not raising their hand sometimes, it seems. So how do we get at changing this culture? And have you three had these instances of uncomfortableness, borderline harassment with male donors, et cetera? And how did you get through that? And did you talk to your male colleagues, and are they helping with that?
I would say, I think we're all smiling. So we've all had all of these moments, I can tell. And I'm sure those joining us today have too. Unfortunately and inevitably, it does come with it. You're in a, it doesn't mean it's right. And my advice, and we talk a lot as a team, is, at the end of the day, you need to live your values. And you also have to be able to know that I think even though there is a bit of a relationship dynamic with a donor and an MGO, you have to remember, or an external person, that
What's an MGO?
a major gift officer. So
Okay.
anyone on the front line, right? People out soliciting gifts. That there is a power that, though we don't want to approach it that way, it inevitably is there. But I also think it's on the other side too, that we should be there to be an extension of that donor's philanthropy. That's really what we are. We're connecting our student athletes and enhancing their experience to their resources, because that's what they know and love. And the minute that changes, that dynamic changes, and things get uncomfortable in that space, then we're really losing what we're all there for, and that is to connect resources to passion, and that's when really great things come from that. So, but it happens a lot. But I also think that in instances when you draw a line or stand up for your own value, you get, I think you need to do that, and a lot of respect comes back to you, like, oh wow, you know, I see I can't go there, or whatever the case may be. But it's difficult. You're navigating it constantly. But the more you kind of stand your line and stand your values and remember why you're there as a going back to your purpose, and that is to enhance the experience of our student athletes, you know. And if this is why they're not there, then this isn't going to work long term anyway. So, but it's difficult. I don't know if there's a perfect answer to it, but it's very prevalent.
Sarah? Oh, Sarah froze up. So Sarah, you froze up. So when you come back, we'll get to you. Marcy, what do you have?
I would say, you know, I mean, Shannon, you hit on it, right? I mean, it's the values, it's who you are. And unfortunately, you know, I can think of situations with donors where there was inappropriate comments, even politically. I mean, I think there can be so many different comments made where you can take offense personally. And I think it's what battles are you willing to take on, and what are just some that you just have to chalk up, unfortunately. And then the other piece, just from aside from a donor experience, but I will say, you know, I think 3 years ago when I took this senior leadership role, and was in many meeting rooms where I was the only female, that it did take a lot of like self-coaching, self-reflection on finding my voice and feeling, while no one told me, you know, there was not men around the room that were telling me not to speak up. I think it was something inside of me that kind of held me back. And finally, you know, the more I felt like I had to educate myself on certain conversations, the more confident I felt. And then now I'm to the point where I'll speak up, you know, at any given moment and without hesitation, you know. And so I think all those feelings are absolutely normal, but sometimes it's really maybe even more self-coaching than anything.
Yeah, no, those are two really honest answers. So thank you for that. I mean, it does happen. And Shannon, great advice on, you know, saying no, and that's not the values, and just changing the dialogue of the conversation. Obviously, if it goes further than that, there's some other issues there. And I'm, again, so glad the male champions are on the call. They can hear what's going on and be helpful. And Marcy, great reminder that, you know, as women, we do have to be, we have to remind ourselves to speak up, because many times we are the only woman in a room. And I see Sarah B got back. So Sarah, what else do you want to add here?
I 100% agree with both Marcy and Shannon. Appreciate your hearts just sharing what you did. And I would say that as a young development officer at Mizzou, probably more so than at Rutgers, I definitely was in situations that were very uncomfortable, and I probably didn't know enough then to know how probably dangerous situations were that I was putting myself in. So I would just say this, I would say to the male leaders and to the female leaders of development offices, you have to open up the conversation intentionally ahead of a situation coming up and saying, this is unacceptable, right? Like Shannon, you said, live your values. Well, I think as a leader of a development shop, you've also got to make sure that the values are known by your employees so that they know the line gets drawn, that they're protected, they're going to be safe, that the university is not more important than their safety as an individual, So I think my only advice would be to those who are leading shops, again, men or women, that you've also got to have that conversation with your staff to know that if they experience something, that it's not okay, and that you're a resource for them.
What about, you've all mentioned, being one of, with Shannon and Sarah, I know you've hired a lot of women, but so for the women on the call that are the only women in development and they're advancing up and say they are in a leadership role, but they're leading people their same age or men that are their same age or older, what advice would you have, when you're in that situation where it's kind of hard to be leading men, particularly in development, or others that are your own age?
I mean, I'll jump in. Marcy, go ahead. You want to go? We go. Okay. I can share, when I was 26 or 27, Whit Babcock, who's now the AD at Virginia Tech, again, another fantastic mentor of mine and advocate and champion. He promoted me to oversee, a majority of the development office. And that meant I oversaw people that were my peers that I got hired in at the same time, men, people who were older than I was. And he told me, he's like, this is going to be the most challenging experience from a managerial perspective you're ever going to have in your career, but it's time, right? I believe in you. Mike believes in you. So for me, I had to rely on the fact that I had confidence in the leadership above me, and they put me in this position for a reason. So if there were moments I was doubting myself in tough conversations, then I had to like remind myself, self-talk, right, Marcy, like you said. But I also made a really big mistake. I was trying to win over one of my male colleagues who I adored. We were good friends, because you're good friends when you're kind of young and that age. And when I got put in the manager role, I could tell he was really upset. He played football. He was, that kind of guy. He was so good at what he did, but he wasn't where I was probably. And obviously that's why they chose me, not him. And I remember I promoted him, right? So I gave him more money. I gave him a different title to try and, in my mind, was going to mitigate what was happening in our office, the culture that he was somewhat affecting because of his negative attitude. And I thought would solve that would be get him more money, get him a title. And instead it made things just worse. So I made the mistake to think I could solve it versus dealing with it head on and or firing him, right? Because as a leader, you've got to make decisions and tough decisions, which I was not ready to make. So I've been through it. I know it. But you have to have confidence in those who put you in the position that you're there for a reason. And when you have a feeling in your mind and your heart that someone's got to go because they're not believing in the culture that you're building, you need to make a decision quicker than later. Problems don't age well.
It's great.
I have a cool, unique story. So we just hired, and shout out to Ron Carragher. He's on the call today too. He's our assistant AD for development here at University of San Diego. But cool story there is Ron's been a coach for over 20 years, a football coach, and was previously our head coach here at San Diego for 6 years. So we recruited him to join our development staff here. He probably started right when COVID hit. So we've been all virtual onboarding him. But so he started in March. And, one thing I'd say is, it's really about the culture, the relationship you want to build, not really, acknowledging maybe their past experience that they have been in coaching for 20 plus years. And that's longer than I've been in administration. But I think, me as a leader, he can teach me a lot, and I'm open to that. And I love that. And, to have a collaborative environment is only going to better the institution. But he's all on board too. He's, we're both meeting each other in the middle, and it's been fun to work with each other. He's going to be an absolute rock star. He is. And so I think, those are some key pieces too, to making it work. And again, it all comes down to our responsibility is to serve our student athletes and advance our efforts, by garnering the resources. So how do you do that? And it's really with collaboration.
Another question, Shannon, did you want to add anything to that? Okay. Another question that came in the chat, since we're talking about working with our male colleagues, is the pay disparity. And, I think it's well documented that many women are not making the same as male colleagues at other institutions, even if they're in the same role. So how do you deal with that? And how have you all dealt with any negotiation that you've had to do to make sure that you even got on equal footing? And again, this has been well documented. I think it is, well, I don't know if it's worse in development. It's bad across all facets of intercollegiate athletics for sure. But what are some strategies that you all have used to make sure that you're getting paid your value?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, I think one of the wonderful things, and I give a lot of credit to the U.S. women's soccer. I mean, people are aware of this now, right? I mean, this has been going on forever, right? But it's finally starting to connect with people. And I think, I look at, again, the U.S. women's soccer team, and what a great example of it's just mind blowing, right? So, for the women on this call, I would say that you've got to do your homework. You've got to look across the board. You've got to figure out pay rates, pay scales, cost of living and all of those types of things. But you need to come to the table when you're accepting a job or negotiating a promotion with data that is unequivocally like, here's what my counterparts are making, male or female, and this is. So I think you've just got to do a ton of homework. And I think, I think there's a lot of resources out there for that. But I think the more that too, the networking that we can do with each other, some of the resources, Patty, that you guys have been able to provide us through, but you've got to do your homework and you got to come to the table with it.
Great.
Drop the mic on that one.
Boom. Marcy, anything else on that?
No, I think that's spot on.
So the negotiation thing, we actually have a podcast coming out on Sunday, Maury, from Wharton Business School. And literally, I just recorded the intro yesterday. And one of the things she said was, women, it is the best book. It's like it's not like any negotiation book I've ever read. It's like therapy. I freaking loved it. I mean, one of the chapters is expect abundance, and it's all about it's just great. But literally she said, women expect less, so we ask for less and we get less. So Shannon, to your point, do your homework and ask for it. And I think now it's really hard if you're asking for it. Now, we're not yet to the point where I think we're all going to get what we're worth without asking for it, unfortunately. But you got to ask for it. So you do your homework, that stuff is out there and you can get that information.
Patty,
Yeah,
Patty,
Sarah.
who's that book by? What's the book called?
Maury, to Hiripur. I'm not, hopefully I said her name correctly. But it's, the podcast is coming out. She's actually going to speak at LEI this summer for us. She spoke at convention a couple years ago, Wharton Business School. Oh, bring yourself, how to harness the power of connection to negotiate fearlessly. Boom. It's like awesome. I loved it. I read it like I couldn't put it down. It's not like any book on negotiation you'll ever read, because it really was about relationships and connection. And it's not like getting something. It's about value, providing value all the time. So, and I mean, all the women on this call need to know you're providing value. We are all providing value, and the men are too. And they need to hear that. And they need to know, sometimes, quite frankly, people just haven't known. And so we got to point it out. So guys, now you know. So we're going to all get what we're all going to get the money we deserve. But before we leave this conversation, and time is flying, it's hard now to get the money we all deserve. Everyone's taking pay cuts because actually we are in literally unprecedented times. I think we would be remiss to not mention this on this call. What are some quick tips, or how are you all handling this, by the way? How are you doing donor events when you can't be in person? Are we still raising money? How's that going?
Oh yeah, we're getting after it over here at University of San Diego. One thing I'll say is, I think when COVID first hit, we were thinking collectively, even with university advancement, of, hey, what's the path forward here? What's the next few weeks look like? For us, we so much rely, like many of you, on the end of year and making that strong push to get our final gifts in. And there was a lot of conversation of, hey, well, this is an uncomfortable time. Let's just make wellness calls. And so that's what we did. But I would say probably 2 or 3 weeks into COVID, we're like, hey, we're going to just start making renewal calls again. And we're going to go after it. We're going to lead by example. We're going to tell University Advancement, this is what we're doing. And we'll report back and tell the good stories. And honestly, it was amazing, an amazing response. People understood the need. We were still having genuine conversations, you know, checking in on them. But it was really a good time for us to tell the story of the impact, the financial impact that we were currently facing and what we're going to face, you know, here in the next few years as well. So we've been very aggressive, and no one has hung up the phone on us. No one has told us, why are you calling? There's certainly been conversations where people aren't necessarily ready. And that's okay too. That's an everyday life for us. And then secondly, we ended up pivoting our largest fundraiser of the year, which is a gala in person in our basketball arena. We ended up pivoting that to a virtual event. And we executed that about 2 weeks ago. It's on YouTube if anybody wants to check it out. It was well done production wise. We raised $140,000, which to put something together in 4 weeks and during these times, and also it's not an event where people are physically going. I was so proud of our staff to really pull that off. And again, you know, people understand the need right now. So it's, hey, get as aggressive as you can while also being compassionate, because we have a responsibility to continue to provide the best resources we can.
Shannon?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think we've got a couple of staff members on here. This summer has certainly been interesting. We have been navigating really what it all looks like. What does it look like from a social distancing perspective? We're getting really ready once that decision's made to launch a Huskies All In campaign. So our major give team is just itching kind of for July 1 to hit, where so we've almost created, we just concluded a campaign that'll conclude in 3 days in July 1, and we're off to the next. And so I will say this, that we've talked a lot about this with our team, is that we're living in an absolutely unprecedented time right now. I don't think athletic departments, we still don't know what this looks like long term, but what we do know is athletic departments are going to need to raise money. They're going to need to raise discretionary money at a level that we haven't ever seen before. So our team is going to be at the forefront of making sure that we are doing everything we can to secure the livelihood of our student athletes, our sport programs, and all of that. So it's kind of nice to be part of the solution. You know, we can make a difference, and that's kind of what we talk about in our meetings constantly. Is this department needs us now more than ever to get out there and to get after it. And if people think we're ready for asks, they're going to be ready for an ask, because we are going through an unprecedented moment right now, and this is a place that they love and they miss. And another thing, when we get on the other side of this thing, people are going to be itching for community and connection and to cheer games and to be together. And so that is the momentum that we need to continue. So I think we're just fired up. I think we don't know what it looks like, but I can tell you that those of the MGOs on our call right now, we're just ready to get after it.
Shannon, I'll totally echo that with our team at Rutgers. You know, we've had a record-setting year, which has been awesome. I give a lot of kudos to Carly and Maggie and Liz and the team that's done a lot of the legwork to get there. But I would just say this, kind of one of the lessons I've learned, to add on to what Marcy and Shannon said. I think our team it's like the horse behind the gate ready to run the race. They just want to go. But I find that you build some of the most authentic and real relationships in tough times with your donors. So my only advice would be to dig in if you're scared of that, or I know for those who experience really done this, but that you actually build the most amazing relationships through the tough times together. And that when you lean into that, the other side of it is really fruitful, and they trust you more. They want to be around you more. and you've gone through something kind of like when you do with your family, you just get closer. So I find that in these times, it's like the best to lean in and really build an even better relationship for the future.
Fantastic. And so we have just a few minutes left. I'm going to try to do some wrap up and let you all give maybe a final word. And I just want everyone to know what I've been trying to do is track on all of the questions in the chat. I was really doing good at the beginning, and there's so many. Here's the themes. One is I want you to know how many men actually responded that they appreciated the conversation and they are going to do better and more. And it was an eye opener. So I really appreciated that. There's other folks shouting out, some men and other leaders that are really being intentional about trying to hire inclusive and diverse teams. So that is noticed now more than ever. There was a lot of questions about, taking on new responsibilities, how to get that next job, and we talked about that. And it seems like that was a confidence thing, but if there's, and just a risk taking, and you all mentioned having great people around you that encouraged you. Again, your network matters. You can call people up and ask questions. And so those were a lot of the themes. There was a couple people that said, hey, they just want to be really good in their jobs. They don't want to run the department. Advice for them. I think you touched that. I mean, be really good where you are, be mission driven, understand the values of the athletic department. So just to all of you on the call, thank you for the questions. I feel like we touched on most of them in one way without asking the question specifically. But to wrap up here, I'm going to ask you all for maybe one final bit of advice for the women on the call that want to be really good in development, no matter what level in development. And before I toss it to you all for the closing words, some things we've heard are having great mentors. All of male and female mentors were mentioned on the call, which is great. Anytime you can be around the executive leadership team to understand the broader vision of the department is important. Ticketing is a great way to get into it, and all these skills are transferable. Being fully present in the moment when you have all these jobs you're managing is super important. Eyes up, phones down, we like to say. Embracing the fluidity, especially right now. Things are changing by the day. And in this, particularly this role in this industry seems super important. As far as negotiations, the number one thing was do your homework and then make the ask. You must do your homework and ask. So look around, find out what other people are making, share that information. And a lot of that is out there actually. And how much we need male champions to help us get more women in this. They've got to take chances on women that might not look like they've got all the skill sets, but they do. We got to be able to step into these roles and grow. So any final words from our esteemed panelists, particularly for the women on the call? And we do want to thank, again, all the guys that joined us here, but for the women on the call that want to excel in whatever level role in development, what's like the number one thing that they need to do? So we're going to start with Shannon.
Well, I think I just said, and I'm repeating a little bit of what I said earlier, but I really believe we're built for this work as women. We really, really are. I think we're actually built for this moment. I think that women tend to be able to lead and navigate crisis a little bit, more. I think there was a wonderful article in the New York Times not too long ago that noted that. So it's an incredible moment, and I think we need to lean into it, and I think we need to own it. And I think the things that make us strong in this space is our ability to be vulnerable, our ability to connect, and our ability to navigate tough things. I've said this to my 10-year-old about 19 times during, remote learning, but we keep saying our family can do tough things. We can do tough things. We have grit. We can get through this. So I would just say, ladies, we're built for this work. Lean into it. And I think this country and our student athletes need us now more than ever. So get after it.
We can do tough things.
We can do tough things. We can do tough things.
Amen, sister. Good. What else you got, Marcy?
I'll list out 4 things that I think are critical for female development officers or those that are trying to advance their careers. Is 1, have an awesome first impression with donors, with leaders, with your peers. First impression is your opportunity, and take advantage of that. Number 2, have some warmth. you know, and again, to the female piece, we have that in us, you know, we're generally compassionate individuals. And then 3, storyteller. Be a great storyteller. Understand your institution, and have great conversations, you know, as a development officer. And then 4, no fear. Have no fear.
I love it. No fear. We
Just-
can- tough thing. Sarah B, I'm
Good.
sorry. This is tough. You gotta have to wrap this up. I don't know how the hell you're gonna
All
do
I
it.
want to say is this, is that you have 3 champions. Patty P, you're another champion, but Shannon, Marcy, and I, first of all, Shannon, Marcy, so cool to be on the panel with you guys, but the 3 of us are also champions. So if you don't lean into us and reach out to us for other advice, other conversations, like you're missing the boat, because we're all open. We want to connect. So we are part of your network. So just know that we're here.
Yeah, women leaders, lift as we rise. I really believe we're all doing that in this industry. Stay connected to each other. And again, thank you 3 for sharing so many insights and so much of your personal stories. And well, before I toss it back to Jason or Sarah to wrap up here, I mean, we can do tough things and we're supposed to lean in. Let's all lean in together. Come on, women, lean in. We're leaning into
My
this.
screen.
We got this.
Leaning
We
in.
can do hard things. We can
All
do
right.
it. Great job.
Thanks,
Great
Patty
job.
P, Shannon, Marcy,
Thank
awesome. Jason, thank you. Bye, you guys.
That was outstanding. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good to see everybody.